Hi, everyone. It's Janice from the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm excited to tell you that my book is now for sale. It's called Divorcing Religion, a Memoir and Survival Handbook, and I'll make sure you have a link in the notes for that. And also, I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and become a member of my YouTube channel. Take care. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm your host, Janice Selbie. I'm a registered professional counselor and a religious trauma recovery coach. My guest today is Lacey Bond, IntimacyLacey. IntimacyLacey is a certified sex, relationship, and intimacy coach and sex kink educator based in Los Angeles. She's dedicated to helping people heal, or as she likes to say, unfuck themselves from purity culture, growing healthy relationships with other people, and developing awesome, shame-free sexuality. Lacey lived the quintessential purity culture experience, raised in the Evangelical church and youth group, Bible study, and Christian school, graduated from Biola University, featured in the 2015 documentary, Give Me Sex, Jesus, and she's here to tell you that all of us can heal or unfuck ourselves from it. You can find Lacey on Instagram and TikTok under @IntimacyLacey, professionally ranting about sex and religion on the internet. Website is IntimacyLacey.com. And of course, Lacey has EY. Welcome. It's so nice to see you again.
Thank you. It's great to see you too. And thank you for the call out of the spelling of my name. I realize that there's a lot of ways to spell that one.
Mm-hmm. And the last time you and I really saw each other or had a chance to talk was at the Shameless Sexuality Life After Purity Culture conference last year, the online one. And you were one of our sponsors for that event. And I was just so delighted then when you reminded me and said, hey, it's time for me to come and join you on your show. So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I was so excited when I saw the existence of that conference, because I'm in a bunch of purity culture recovery groups on Facebook, and Tessie Muskrat, one of the speakers, was in one and was like, hey, I'm speaking at this conference, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, that's neat. And then I took a closer look and was like, wait, a sex positive conference specifically for purity culture survivors? Like, this is my entire me, like my brand, my audience, my everything. Like, so I was really jazzed, and it was a really good conference. Like, I'm so glad you put that together.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, and you're exactly the type of person that I'm interested in featuring at the event, and also for sharing it with your audience because of the work that you do. Would you take us back to the beginning, so to speak, and tell us a little bit more about your own life and how religion and purity culture impacted you?
Yeah, so I was a cradle Christian. So I was born and raised into the Evangelical church. My parents converted in the 80s. Like, I think my dad had grown up like kind of nominally Roman Catholic, and my mom's upbringing was, I think, not like markedly religious. So they had both converted, I think, in the 80s, or at least like become really devout. And so they started their family in the early 80s in LA. And then I grew up in Northern Nevada, which is a fairly conservative region. And yeah, my whole life was like Christian church and Bible study, like from preschool to university. Like, I was at exclusively Christian schools, except for like years when I was homeschooled, which was also an exclusively Christian school, because just my entire understanding of life, the universe, and everything was not 42, unfortunately. It was that Jesus is Lord, and all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him may not perish and have eternal life. Didn't realize that one was so in there.
The verses are still in there, yeah.
I'm like, I would have to check the reference to see if I was like 100% on, but like, I went to Christian schools. We had like homework of memorizing Bible verses on a weekly basis at my middle school, because I went to like 5 different Christian schools from like preschool and elementary to like, I think 1 more grade school in there, and then like homeschool, and then a Christian middle school, and then a Christian high school, during which like I took a year off to go to homeschool and do community college because I was a very smart, overachieving child, straight A's.
Nice.
And I started going to college classes. Excuse me while I adjust my cushion. I started going to college when I was in high school, but I did a mix of homeschool and community college in high school, which was probably one of my earlier exposures to kind of like the outside world because it was pretty insulated. I'm the 4th of 5 kids. We were all raised like in the church and Christian schools, though I think I may have been like the most devout of the kids. I mean, I was very like, well... I'm debating. I was debating between the terms educated and indoctrinated, because I am also very well biblically educated. Like these schools are actually like private Christian schools often do have like a really solid education, including a lot of biblical scholarship. So like I was taking church history in high school as well as world religions, which was, as you might guess, all about how all the other religions are wrong, except Judaism, sort of, but only if they accept Jesus and are Messianic Jews.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, definitely anything outside of that, I already like knew in my soul was wrong. Like, I think in probably kindergarten, one of my classmates was wearing Power Ranger shoes because it was the 90s.
Right.
And I like looked at them, and I don't know how word of this got back to my parents because this story happens. They will remind me that like I like looked at his shoes and was like, those are of Satan or something.
Oh my God.
And this was at a Christian school.
Power Rangers.
So like even within Christian school, like I was definitely on the narrower side, I guess, of the straight and narrow. And yeah, I just grew up believing that all of humankind was inherently sinful due to original sin and that we needed Jesus to save us. But I already knew that, so I was good. Yeah, didn't stop me from getting
I have a question.
You have a question?
Yeah. So you were the 4th of 5 kids. So were your other siblings walking, I got my air quotes going, walking with Jesus all the way along? Because I know when I was the youngest, and as each of my older siblings turned their backs on Jesus and on the Bible and everything, I saw how upset it made my parents. And I internalized that and thought, well, I'm never going to do that. I never want to hurt mom and dad that way. I'm just curious if it was similar for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't speak too much to like, the particulars of everybody's experiences in my family because like, those are their stories to tell. But like, definitely from my perception, the same exact thing happened where like, I was very much like good Christian girl and I didn't want to get in trouble or get spanked. And I very rarely got in trouble. I was such a good kid. Like the stuff I got in trouble for was like not that bad. But yeah, like as my older siblings, because there's an age gap between some of us, like I would see them, living their lives or doing stuff that my parents didn't like, whether it was, just like general teenage behavior, or it probably wasn't until like high school that I like got the feedback that like such and such like older sibling, had fallen away or some such definition of like not being in the faith and like knowing and feeling like, oh, that's bad. Like they need to be saved. And so, yeah, the same thing where I was like, oh, like, yes, like my parents did not like that. So that was very eerily similar what you just described. Yeah.
And then you went to Biola University. So what were you aiming for there? What degree was in your sights?
Shockingly, not an MRS degree. That wasn't like my goal to get married, to go to college to get married. Although Biola did add like a home econ major after I graduated. I don't know if they still have it, but I was like, did you guys actually implement an MRS degree?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So I was a super devout like teenager, and I really wanted to go to a good Christian school and continue to be like a witness. I mean, I never really liked like evangelizing. Like I went to apologetics conferences and stuff where they actually like made us do sidewalk evangelism, and I found it intensely uncomfortable, even as like a 17-year-old. And but that was around the time that I was looking at colleges, and I looked at Seattle Pacific, and I looked at I want to say Cornell. I looked at the Lutheran universities, and like APU, Azusa Pacific, Point Loma. Like I looked at all the Christian schools. I visited Liberty University because someone in my family had gone there, and they had a theology of Tolkien class that I was like really interested in because Lord of the Rings is my Roman Empire. You can ask me anything. Except I haven't read Tolkien's letters. Don't ask me about that. I'm not that hardcore. I don't LARP, and I don't read Tolkien's letters. That's not true. I'm absolutely LARPing this weekend. I'm just going to take a water break.
You're a LARPer.
I'm playing a non-playable character in my friend's D&D one shot, and I'm going to be like in character. So that counts as live action role play. It's not technically like a weekend event. Okay, Twin Maskers, don't come at me. But like, yeah, I'm that level of nerd. But I visited Liberty, and like Biola, but more restricted, because Bob Jones and Biola are the top most conservative. They had all these rules about like what movies you could watch on campus, like the length of a girl's haircut, or no, it was the length of a guy's haircut that I had heard about, like being called out for like, hitting the collar or whatever. Because it's in Virginia and it's in the South. But I chose Biola because like a youth pastor who I really liked had gone there. Like I liked their vibes. They seemed really cool. And like, I think that was probably the right place, the right vibe out of all the places I looked. But my outcome was like, I wanted a good education to get like a job. I didn't want to go into ministry or worship, or, worship ministry is a type of ministry. I didn't want to go into missions. But I wanted a good Christian education that was going to like, basically like kind of reinforce everything that I believed and not tell me the lies of the outside world. Like, I don't know how evolution works. Didn't learn that one until like 5 years ago. The podcast Ologies has a great episode on evolution if you may have missed certain key scientific pieces of education in your upbringing.
How fun. What about the sex? Anywhere along the way, was there any sex education, either in the homeschool or the Christian school or the university?
Yeah. And actually, like, I remember we had a pretty informative and like anatomically correct, like illustrated age appropriate book in my house growing up that was Christian. So, I mean, that's great that exists, because so many people get nothing. Like, you don't even talk about it. And even like for me, there is what I describe as just like a resounding silence around sexuality in the church, particularly women's sexuality. It's what I did like my senior project on at Biola, is like this capstone project that they have to kind of bring your whole Christian education together. And I was like, this is not healthy and actually not really biblical either, because we have a very narrow doctrinal tradition in the US, especially for evangelicalism. Which purports to be non-denominational, and yet there is just some very strong puritanical through lines. But insofar as sex education itself, like I definitely checked out that book. I don't know if my mom like ever like read it with me or anything. I mean, I was always reading everything in the house all the time anyway. So that was like my earliest kind of intro to like the body, which is pretty good. And I did never experience any like sexual mistreatment or abuse, which is amazing because I know a lot of people do. And it's actually the incidence rate is significantly higher in that demographic. Because if you don't have language for it, you can't talk about it. And that's why purity culture is rape culture. Anyways, I remember I got my first purity ring. I want to say I was probably around 10. And it was just, I don't remember the details of that conversation. I remember my mom giving it to me, and it was very pretty. It had a little heart with a little cross inside and little scroll work on the sides. And it probably fit my index finger when I was that age. It eventually only fit my pinky, and I have no idea where it is now. So that conversation.
What did she say when she gave it to you?
I don't remember. It revolved around like, purity and being good and, not letting, I don't know, it might have been the theme that I recall from like, middle and high school when I was a little bit more like understanding, because I'm pretty sure I had that ring like before middle school. Like guessing on the age based on like my memory of the day and like the park that it was at that I recall. But when you're that young, you don't remember everything. So I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. The theme was like, being good and pure and like not like giving yourself to anyone else. Cause it was framed as like a risk of being like hurt or damaged. And I mean, to this day, I identify as demisexual because like I don't trust people. So like I just like need to be very, very comfortable like emotionally with a person. But it's more of a trust thing than a libido level thing for me. But the sexuality spectrum of asexuality, demi, gray sexual, allosexual, hyposexual, hypersexual. It's like a Kinsey scale, but it was definitely around like saving yourself and staying safe. Probably more than it was for me personally about like the being damaged. Although like that message definitely sunk in, I think more in high school when I had more of an understanding of that. But yeah, we probably had at least a sex ed session in middle school somewhere, like in health. And then in high school, we did have sex ed, and it was extremely abstinence only, abstinence or hell. I think the curriculum probably was Christian because it was also really homophobic. There was this
so how is that sex education if it's promoting abstinence? I mean, did they tell you anything about here's how a baby is made?
Yeah. And I remember actually watching The Miracle of Life, but it was in community college. We did not watch that in high school, as I recall. I think we might have watched the OG like Disney sex ed thing, but it was because it actually is pretty accurate. Disney, I believe, animated a sex ed PSA in like the 50s.
Did not know that.
Yeah, okay. It's delightful. So I think I got that. So we did like learn the basics of like, this is what the genitalia are called. Although like, kind of glossed over a lot of stuff. We did not talk about pleasure at all. We talked about needing to use protection, and we got like all the spiels about STDs. Because if you're not familiar with Nevada, it is the only state in the country with legalized prostitution. And so like that actually was a big part of my awareness of sexuality, because we joke about it all the time. Because in Northern Nevada, where I'm from, you can only actually have legal brothels in counties with a population of, I think, under 500,000, and then only by like county decree, like it has to be voted on or approved. So outside of certain cities will be the brothels. So like I grew up with jokes about like the Cat House or the Bunny Ranch in Mound House, which was less than like an hour from where I lived. And I think one of the girls I went to high school with ended up, being a sex worker and like getting arrested a few times. Which I'm sure anyone who's gone to high school in Nevada could say that. But I remember her mom really liking me in high school because I was like a good influence. Apparently not good enough. I'm pro sex work, and it's illegal in that state. It is legal in that state, but you have to be working out of a brothel, and she wasn't. So I guess I wasn't enough to save that person from a life of sin, which really felt like it was my responsibility the whole time growing up, was like to save everyone. And I guess now that I've transitioned into a coach, you can see that drive is still there, even though my job as a coach is not to save everyone. It's to help people figure their shit out and unfuck themselves.
Right. And so, and by the way, I would like to give a shout out to the sex workers who listen to and watch this podcast, because I consider that they are doing an important service. And I would like to see it legal everywhere so that people could be safe, so that the workers could be safe and receive adequate compensation for their work.
Compensation and protection, labor rights, labor compensation.
Right. Yes, I love it. And so then, were you dating at all? No. Did you have Christian boyfriends? Like, what happened?
No, I was not cool enough to date. And I think people could probably tell that I was like definitely like the high horse, good Christian girl. I had like a couple crushes in middle school that were not returned. One of them later in high school told me that they would go out with me if I looked like my older sister, which was great for my self-esteem. I slapped him in the face in art class. I think to this day, that might be the only time I've ever like slapped a man, like that wasn't like, spicy. But like, so yeah, not really any dating. Even like there were guys I was interested in at Biola, but like it didn't work out. Like we had like DTR talks where they're like, I'm focusing on Jesus right now.
What's DTR?
A define the relationship talk. So as far as Christian college terminology goes, we got the MRS degree. When you go to college, you get the missus and get married. Define the relationship, a DTR. And then there's like ring by spring. Goes along with MRS. Oh. It's very common for Christian girls to go to college and be engaged by like spring of their freshman year. Wow. And then I don't know if they finish their education or what. I think it's probably 50-50. So yeah. And at Biola itself, we had so many chapels about like male lust and struggling with like masturbation or porn. Christian men self-report porn and masturbation problems and addiction way higher than the general populace, and they actually engage in both of those behaviors significantly less than the general populace. So it's one of the bugbears that people in the sex pause space, whether they're therapists or coach or researchers, is like this obsession with the idea of porn addiction, because if it were truly an addiction, you would be using more than the average person, and you would get desensitized, which in research trials, you're actually not. People who watch porn regularly actually are not as desensitized like to it when they've done research. Justin Lay-Miller had a podcast episode about that I was listening to. I forget when it was published, but I was like, oh, interesting. He wrote Tell Me What You Want, which was a compilation and explanation of his 4,000 person research survey on sexual fantasy in the U.S. Most common sexual fantasy in the U.S. You want to guess what it is?
No, you tell me.
Sex with multiple partners. Group play is something most almost the vast majority fantasizes about, but very few people actually have done, which may be why people are so fascinated by it. And just people, you crave novelty, and that's okay. Like the spectrum of human sexual behavior is so much broader than I was led to believe.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I certainly found as a person who was married for almost 20 years and in a monogamous marriage, Christian marriage, things can feel pretty vanilla after a while. Even when you really care about your partner, we do crave novelty. And then also there can be that element of taking each other for granted. And so not complimenting your partner, so they sometimes just end up feeling like a piece of furniture. And the greatest aphrodisiac, I feel, is to be desired. And so sometimes we forget to remind our partner that we still desire them. So I definitely know what that's like, to be curious and crave being with other people. And then on the other side of that, I also have experienced some fantasies, sexual fantasies in particular, when you force them to happen, when you make them happen. Sometimes they just don't measure up. Often they don't measure up. So, I mean, that's why fantasy is so primo, because it's fantasy. But in reality, maybe someone should have chewed some gum or something or something. So it's just interesting. But I love that in my life, over my life, as I released religion and then I ended my marriage, I was able to experience, I was able to try so much, like anything I wanted, pretty much, I could try. And that was so liberating for me.
Amazing. Yeah, that phase of opening up and exploring is so cool. I really want to, on a nerdy like product development side, like I really want to develop some kind of package for like women who are in that phase and wanting to explore. Like I was workshopping names with a friend for something like this, because I do like field trips as a coach. Like if you want to go and like explore an adult toy store, but like you're afraid to go alone, which is super common, like I get it. I can take you and I can make product recommendations. Honestly, I should just start working at Romantics. It's one of my favorite stores. It's an adult store, adult toy store chain, if you're not familiar. But like women who are in that phase and are like, I'm ready and like I want to do stuff, but like what even is out there? Because it's hard to find and access sexual information, like because in this country we have that wonderful puritanical heritage and everything is very taboo and hush hush, which is why I talk about it so much, because I love talking about sex. I'm very sex positive, and I have come to believe, and we can get to the journey of how I got there, that like pleasure is your birthright. As
Yes.
My program lead Mo likes to say, there's a whole module like called that, and I just like, it is so true. You deserve to feel good, whether it's eating delicious food or feeling delicious sensations or going on roller coasters and getting your adrenaline rush, or having sex with whoever you want or with yourself. Having great sex with yourself, amazing. You've got your theater of your mind. You've got like whatever toys you like, you know what you feel like. You don't have to communicate about the sensation to anyone else. You can just focus on that. Like,
Yeah.
solo pleasure.
I love that. I think that's so important, and even really maybe a great starting place for people, because we know, I mean, I've raised children, and when children are little, they're discovering their body, and they discover that it feels good when they touch parts of their body. But I feel like purity culture disengages people from pleasure, and particularly from sexual pleasure from their own body, because a lot of purity culture teaching even insists that masturbation is wrong and sinful and bad for you. So then when clients come to me and they're recovering from purity culture and religious trauma, part of what I end up doing is just encouraging them to reconnect with their body and with their own sexuality. And because a lot of times they haven't ever had sex. They maybe haven't even ever had a date with someone. And sometimes I get people that are, older than me, in their 60s and 70s, coming to me and saying, I've never had a date. I was waiting for Jesus to bring me the person, and then the person never showed up. And now I don't believe in Jesus, but I don't have a clue what to do. And so then we're gently working on just getting to know what you like, what feels good to you. Because when we're with a partner, you have to be able to express that to them so they know what feels good to us.
Yeah. Self-exploration and acceptance is the foundation to a good life in general. And what you were saying about like that disconnecting us from our bodies, like it's almost like how can you even have anything different than that when you're told that you are not of the flesh but of the spirit? Like you are not your physical body. And like to some extent, especially as a disabled person, like yeah, that's true, but the way it was taught to us was like everything in this mortal world is dust. And I don't mean that in a apocalyptic way. It's just that it's transient. What matters is your soul and your eternal soul's security in heaven, so that you can, have a good afterlife. Have a good afterlife. And and not suffer in eternal conscious torment, in eternal like burning in hell. Like we had an illustrated Bible that I was reading from the time I could read, and I started reading young at like 3 or 4. So like imagine like 5, 6, that had like illustrations in the book of Revelation of hell. So like I grew up with that idea in my head from like, there was never a time where I was conscious that I didn't know and believe this to be true, that I didn't know about this and believe it to be true. So in Christianity, these doctrines do tend to disembody us. A lot of post-purity or coming out of or deconstructing women from religious purity culture don't really have a good connection with their bodies in terms of like, it's hard to describe, being like touching yourself and feeling good overall in general. But because like we are taught implicitly, but over and over enough that it's very clear, your bodies are an object of sexual lust. Your bodies cause your brothers to sin. You have a body and it causes your brother in Christ to sin. Doesn't matter how many times you phrase it in the passive voice. My body is bad and I will cause my brothers in Christ to stumble, is the message that we come away with, or at least that I did. And I know I'm not alone. I got talked to at an apologetics conference once that I was at to learn apologetics. And I'm still good at it. I mean, I could probably convert someone if I tried hard enough. But that idea.
What were they talking to you about?
That I had a shirt that was like kind of semi-sheer and you could see like the pattern of my bra through it. And so like the girl counselor like took me aside. I know, a scandal. She's wearing a bra in 2017, 2007. I don't know how old I am. Good heavens, she's wearing a bra. How dare we let the boys know that? So I got like pulled aside and like talked to like, hey, like the boy, like your pattern is visible, like you should go change it. And I was like, oh my God, okay, oh my gosh, not oh my God, oh my gosh, like okay, and like went and changed it. And like I went to Hume Lake Christian camps and like had to wear like a t-shirt over my bikini swimsuit. And it teaches boys at the same time, like with all these messages about like struggling with masturbation and like that, like you're visual creatures. And it teaches them that they are like lust-filled monsters who can't control themselves or be controlled. Purity culture is rape culture. And like, yeah, it teaches us we're objects of lust, and it teaches them that they're monsters who can't stop themselves from lusting after us. And so like they grow up, they get this crazy like self-hatred. And like that carries over when they're indulging in like what is a lower than normal amount of self-pleasure or consuming adult entertainment. And they're just like, I'm horrible and evil and I struggle with this. And it's like, bestie, no, you're fine. Like, I don't want to shake your worldview. I do. But like, you know, the Plicit model requires that you meet patients where they're at, not patients, clients. I can break down the Plicit model in a minute, but it's a sex education or sex therapy approach where you don't just go in and fuck someone up. You have to meet people where they're at. That
sounds reasonable.
Core of it. Yeah, it is. But it's like, honey, like you're actually fine.
Well, you know, I do wonder though with so then men and boys are being taught, watch out for girls and women, watch out for their bodies. They'll lead you into sin. And then that's coupled with your men are to be the head. Oh, I got my air quotes going. The head of the home. They're to be the spiritual leader. They're in charge. But then are those boys or men being taught anything about consent and about how important it is that their wife wants to participate in whatever it is they're suggesting, or that I don't think that's something that really gets talked about a lot in churches and in Bible studies for men. So, I mean, consent is another huge one. And then even for me as a woman to learn about consent, I certainly wasn't taught it. So it's something that I had to really think about myself and teach myself. And I feel like that's also a huge purity culture hangover sometimes.
Yeah, I'm actually pulling up something right now because, like, I'm sure we talked about, you know, don't assault people in sex ed. But like most men can't differentiate between consent and coercion when it has been studied. And I forget who's been doing the research, but there's a therapist and or obviously a sex researcher I follow on Threads who has done research on the orgasm gap, specifically in evangelical women they have like 25% fewer orgasms than the general populace. Don't cite me on that number. I'd have to look it up, but it is statistically very significant, which, you know, consent is probably part of that, especially, you know, if you grow up with the message that like, no one ever tells us that girls might want sex. It was always about like the boys. And it's the, you know, one of the premises of my, you know, undergrad thesis, for lack of a better word, was this women like sex too sometimes, and that denying this and by never ever addressing it and framing everything else around male desire and male lust and male lack of control and us having to gatekeep from men, God, it sets you up to just have this very us versus them thing, which is great for marriages, I'm sure. Like we just like the battle of the sexes is very stark in this specific sphere, but like by never even like telling us that women like might want sex, then like women feel bad for experiencing a normal sex drive, and then men will still feel bad for like objectifying their wife after they're married. Like, I feel bad, like she's so sexy, and I know that's okay, but like I feel bad. I'm like, yeah, because you were programmed to feel bad every time you experience desire or attraction, and like a lot of guys didn't deprogram from that, and so like that comes into all kinds of relationships for both people.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And yeah, so everybody needs to find out, figure out what feels good to them, what they like, how they can describe that to their partner or partners if they're with other people, so that we can, because we have to teach each other. We don't know, because what one person enjoys, you know, then the next one might not enjoy that at all for very different reasons. It doesn't even really matter what the reason is. I just need to know, what does my partner like? How can I facilitate them feeling really, really good? Because that's what I want. It's for my partner to feel really, really good. And I also want to feel really, really good. And I want to recommend a book. You're probably familiar with it, by Dr. Lori Mintz, called Becoming Clitorate. Yeah.
I'm friends with Dr.
Good.
Lori. We talk on Instagram. Let me grab the book.
Sure. Yes, she spoke at the previous Shameless Sexuality, Life After Purity Culture conference, and her book is just fantastic. Yay, that's it.
Yeah, she's been advising me on how to go about getting my own book that I'm working on published. Love you, Dr. Lori. Because I'm writing a book on recovering from purity culture through kink, which I can get into.
Oh, yes. And that, please do, because one thing I definitely have heard when it comes to teaching and learning consent is that attending some kink, BDSM classes, or however you want to put it, that can be a really powerful way to learn about consent, offering consent, and even then sometimes denying consent, like getting comfortable with saying, no, I don't want that, because Christian women, especially, we've been raised to say yes to everything. And so we are allowed to say no, and we must say no when something doesn't feel right to us or we don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to like consent and sexual communication, we don't learn how to talk about sex other than like yes or no, largely, or are you using protection? And I think part of that is because the general idea that people have of what sex is very, it's very like all inclusive and binary kind of at the same time. Like if all you know is that like having sex is like, you know, PIV, penis in vagina intercourse, fucking, as it were. I hope you're okay with the explicit rating on this episode, Janice.
Oh, yes. Yeah, no problem.
Beep, 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 beep. It's like this all or nothing thing. Like you're either having sex or you're not. And like, there's not like, you don't really learn the nuanced, granular things about like, oh, would you like it if I went down on you? Or I want to go down on you, which one sounds really sexy. And two is a request for graduated consent. We're already, presumably, I mean, you could say this at any point, but for this scenario, if you're like making out and canoodling and taking clothes off, I want to go down on you. Can I go down on you? Is a check-in to see if the other person is into that specific thing. Because like usually when we're seeing sex scenes, whether they are simulated or they're like in adult entertainment, there's not a lot of talking. I love it when there is, because talking is sexy. And like you said, being desired, dude, sexual objectification, body worship, look up those kinks on your own time. You're welcome. Those are so sexy. And if you use the come as you are, like accelerator versus brake pedal metaphor, that is an accelerator for most people. Like, tell me what you want. Oh, tell me you want me. So like being unable to really say anything beyond like, yeah, I want sex or not. And especially not having like information about all the things that sex can include or that someone might consider foreplay versus sex. Like if you engage in non-consensual foreplay, is it sexual assault? Should be considered that, but like there's not great like legal definitions for a lot of things, and there aren't great like societally shared meanings for a lot of these things because we don't talk about it, which is why I do love that Kink talks so much and so explicitly about consent, because if you don't know any kind of like comprehensive definition, comprehensive sex ed should include comprehensive consent education, then you can fall into coercion, whether you're being nefarious about it or not. So there's two acronyms that we like to use for consent. One is FRIES, which stands for freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. So you need to not be under coercion. You need to be able to change your mind. You got to know what you're getting into. You better be into it and not just say, oh, okay. And specific, what exactly are we doing? So this is a pretty good overall framework. Like it's beyond the binary of yes or no. It includes like people's agency, that freely given and informed. Like one of the things that I harp on a lot about kink is that it's predicated on people's agency and autonomy to be able to negotiate and essentially build fantasies, because BDSM itself is like a framework and a container in which like that gives you frameworks for practicing your kinks, the stuff you're into. Now the FRIES metaphor or the FRIES acronym is really good, but there's a couple of things it doesn't capture, such as like routine sex, where it can be chore-like, but that doesn't mean it's like bad or non-consensual, for example. And then there are like fantasies where you may be simulating something that is less than enthusiastic consent or something that is not consent. This is very common types of play, and it can include just things like, you don't have to explicitly ask, can we have sex before you have sex? That's implied. It includes implied consent, as well as simulated non-consent. If you're doing any kind of like resistance fantasy or free use or somnophilia, waking up your partner with sex, that operates on implied consent and a nuanced understanding of a shared ongoing consent that, can still be reversible. So, I forget who developed it, because Planned Parenthood developed FRIES, and another acronym is CRISP. So FRIES, CRISPs. So that is considered, reversible, informed, specific, and participatory. So that considered and participatory are kind of where you get into the nuance of like, is this person reciprocating? Are they reacting in a way that I would expect them to based on what we have discussed and negotiated beforehand? Zoom just said I held my, it was like, did you raise your hand? No, I just like to talk with my hands because I'm Italian. I'm not. I'm German, Anglo-Irish. And so like having a more nuanced understanding is really important so that you can take full responsibility for your actions. And responsibility is really huge in the kink world and the BDSM world, whether or not you're practicing, you know, like a very structured form. Sorry, my camera keeps going. I'm going to just fix that. So any questions before I move on from our acronyms?
No, I really like those. Well, okay, yes. So I'm thinking, I mean, imagine how long it's been since I've been to high school, a long, long time. Are we teaching students about, coercion and the idea of consent so that they know what consent means? Like we have to, everybody has to be able to have a voice and to use their voice, but definitely, so in a lot of the situations, it is the males that they're stronger. They often outweigh us, or this sort of thing. So there is a power
And
differential there.
They also have more societal power.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Most rape accusations are not believed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let alone when it's like coercion.
Right. Yeah. Right. And so do you talk with your clients about that, about coercion?
It comes up from time to time. Usually it's to point out like, hey, did you want to be doing that? Like, and that can extend, outside the bedroom as well. Like something that came up in a group I was in recently was that like this person's partner wanted her to, and this was in a dom and subgroup. So it was their dominant partner wanted them to cut off a friendship with someone of the opposite sex or another gender of them that they had known for a long time. And like they had kids who were the same age and all this stuff. And everyone in the group was like, no, your dominant can't tell you to do that. You are still a person. You have this existing relationship. You have to consider and prioritize what is best for you as an autonomous person. And that type of unnegotiated dominance, I think, happens a lot in religious and purity culture contexts, because we have that wonderful umbrella illustration with God as the big umbrella, and then the father, and then the mother, and then the kids, which is a very complementarian stance. Not all Christians are like this. My household wasn't like super duper like that. But there's definitely like, if you don't negotiate, and that is the difference between BDSM, domination, submission, and like traditional marriage, is that it's not really negotiated based on both people having an equal amount of bodily and mental sovereignty, agency, and autonomy. There's generally less, whether it's implicit or explicit, for the woman in that case. And all genders in dominance and submission come to the table as co-equal humans, because you are co-creating an experience together, whether it is a single scene where you're just playing around for, 20 minutes or an hour or whatever, or longer if you're having a great time and you keep checking in and saying green. Or if it's like an ongoing relationship. And really all relationships should be negotiated. But religious relationships tend not to be as much. So that framework of operating off of autonomy, agency, consent, and negotiation is what really appeals to me about BDSM and like the kink world, which is kind of like the big umbrella under which all the stuff you could be into, which includes BDSM, various types of play and kinks, like, oh, I have a hand kink, or like I have a daddy kink, or whatever, or a praise kink. Wouldn't know anything about that. Like I'm not workshopping the title Good Girl for my new book, Good Christian Girl, but with Christian crossed out, which seems a little spicy, and I try not to be, but it's just so good. No one steal that. It's mine.
That's right.
I really must register something somewhere. So
are people that come to you for help, are they mostly folks who have come out of religion and purity culture?
It's usually people who've recognized what it is and are trying to deprogram, move away from it. and like they know like there's a lot of baggage or there's a lot of stuff tangled up, but I don't know where the end of the thread starts or like which piece of baggage to try to put down first. So yeah, I don't typically find people who are like still like of the faith or wanting to like stay. There are some, but they definitely like all want to get away from purity culture and like develop their own sexual ethic and figure out what's what. And there's a lot of feelings of anger, grief, and betrayal, especially from women who have these realizations later. They're like, this was stolen from me. I didn't have a choice and I bought into it, or I felt trapped for a long time, or whatever it is. But like the feminine rage of coming out of purity culture and discovering that you have always had this, you've always had access to this and not been allowed, is pretty strong.
Wow, that's powerful. That is very powerful. And do you work with couples? You work with people who just approach you individually?
I do both. Yeah. So I'll do one-on-one coaching, and I can also work with couples or couples plus if you're polyamorous, because that's also an area that I'm very familiar with. I live in LA. There are quite a lot of polyamorous folks here, especially, the worlds that I walk in: Ren Fair, Nerd, Dungeons and Dragons, LARP, Kink. It's the Venn diagram is a circle for a lot of that, because role play, game design, fantasy, expressing yourself, building worlds. Yeah, dungeon masters make the best. Dungeon masters make the best dungeon masters.
So what you just described there, that whole all those different groups and all the crossover that they have, that to me sounds like freedom. Sounds like people who have an understanding that they're walking through this world, and they get to also be creating the world that they want to be walking through, including in their sex life and their sexuality and their sexual expression. That's just so cool. I want to have you back again for part 2 of our discussion somewhere down the road. Because I would love for you to be able to share with my audience just all sorts of interesting things that they might not be aware of. Like when we were talking earlier, you talked about allosexual and demisexual and all these different types. And so I think those would be very interesting, and they're important. And I'd love also to explore a little bit more about the difference between, consent and coercion. Very important topics. What's the best way for people to find you?
So I am on Instagram at IntimacyLacey. My website is the same, IntimacyLacey.com. That is spelled Lacey. Oh, I just remembered we didn't talk about plicit, and it is very important. Can I touch on that real quick?
Can we squeeze it in now, or should we? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an approach for sex education or health education, and it stands for permission, limited information, specific suggestions, and then intensive therapy, which, so those first 3, permission is the clinician gives the client permission to discuss sexual concerns without judgment, making it clear it's a safe space. The clinician or provider provides limited information, like just enough to clear up misconceptions without overwhelming someone. You're just focusing on basically letting them lead. Oh, my screen just blooped. And then offering specific suggestions. So it's a very focused area. And because sex is a very vulnerable and taboo area, it's important to take like a very proven effective path that keeps people in a safe, comfortable, like learning space. You can expand and like you can challenge beliefs, etc. But doing it in a focused way, in a safe container. And then the IT, the intensive therapy, is referring out to a licensed clinician, therapist, to work on any specific issues that need to be focused on in that framework.
Beautiful. Wow. Wow. This has been such an interesting and fun conversation with you, Lacey. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to having you back again.
Thank you. And there is a page on my website about the book if you want to learn a little bit more about that. And I'm really excited to come back for part 2 soon. Thank you so much, Janice.
Yes. All right. Take care. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this spicy conversation as much as I did. And we'll see you all again soon. Bye-bye.